Hey guys, welcome to the video for solving one-step equations. This is the first video for Unit 1B. Our essential question is, what are the steps for solving a linear equation? So, when we solve linear equations, we do PEMDAS in reverse order. So we're going backwards. And we use inverse operations to do that. So you're like, well, what are inverse operations? Well, they're basically the opposite. So when we're solving equations, we're going to do PEMDAS in order. But when we simplify, we use PEMDAS. So we're doing the backwards of what you're normally used to doing. So let's talk about what inverse operations are. Inverse operations are the opposite. So if I have addition, the inverse would be subtraction. If I have subtraction, the inverse would be addition. If I have multiplication, the inverse is division. If I have division, the inverse is multiplication. If I have an exponent like a squared, then the opposite or the inverse of that would be square rooting. And if I square root, then the inverse of that is going to be squaring it. So I'm going to square it. I'm going to put a little 2 on it. I'm going to square it up. All right, so those are their operations and their inverse. Our goal at the end of the day when we're solving an equation is to get the variable by itself. You want to isolate it. You want to get it alone. So you want to get it all by itself. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go get a calculator so we can talk about some things later. All right, so number 1, I have 3x equals 15. Now, this is one-step equations because there's one step to get to the answer. So I have 3x equals 15. Well, let's first ask, what am I trying to get by itself? Trying to get the x by itself, right? So if I want to get the x by itself, I need to get rid of that 3. Well, 3 and x are combined by the operation of multiplication. So in order to get rid of the 3, I have to do the inverse, which is division. So since it's 3 times x, I now have to divide by 3. And we're going to go ahead and draw a line through all of our equal signs so that we have a little wall here. We want to make sure that we understand, hey, these are opposite sides. So anything you do to one side, you have to do to the other side, which is what I have at the very bottom here. So we said that the inverse of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide both sides by 3. What's 3 divided by 3? Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1. So this cancels, and I just have x. Okay, 3 divided by 3 is 1. Equals 15 divided by 3, which is 5. So x equals 5. What does that mean? It means I can plug in a 5 up there, and then I have 3 times 5, which equals 15, and that's correct. So I know that's right because I can check it. I can plug it in. All right, so down here I have some important words, or some important information. It says equations must be balanced. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Balance, right? So like you go to the gym, you're not going to pick a 5-pound dumbbell and use it on your left arm and then use a 50-pound dumbbell on your right arm, right? So you want to do balance. So anything you do to one side, you have to do the exact same thing to the other side, which is why I have a little line here. It kind of shows us where the sides are. I'm going to change it because I don't like this blue color. I'm going to change it to green. There we go. All right, so moving on. Number 2, I have x divided by 5 equals 12. Well, I want x by itself, and it's connected to 5 by division. So in order to get rid of division, I have to multiply. So I'm going to multiply this by 5 over 1, because 5 over 1 at the end of the day is just 5. And I'm also going to multiply the other side by 5 over 1. Well, over here, if I have 5 in the numerator and 5 in the denominator, these are going to cancel because 5 divided by 5 is just 1. So then on this left side, I forgot to draw my little wall. On this left side, all I have left is x over 1 equals 12 times 5 over 1, which is 60. And I have x all by itself, so I'm done. And I can check that by doing 60 divided by 5, that equals 12. All right, number 3 and number 4 have stars next to them because they're a little bit different. So let's begin. This x is not by itself. What's connected? A little exponent, a square. In order to get rid of this square, I'm going to square root. And anything I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I'm going to square root this. And when I square root it, it's going to get rid of that 2. So all I have left is the x. But anything I do to that side, I also have to do to the other side. So when I square root 25 in the calculator, so I'm going to show you real quick. So let me turn my calculator on. All right, so let me clear this. So I want to square root 25, correct? So do you see how this little blue square root, or the square root here is in blue? In order to get this button, I'm going to have to hit second and then this button, because in order to access any blue button, you have to hit second. So now I have a little square root sign. I'm going to plug in 25, and I hit enter. Well, the calculator gives me 5. How do you think I got 5? Well, if I'm square rooting something, I'm trying to figure out a number that multiplies by itself to get to 25. So for example, 5 times 5 is 25, so the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 16 would be 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. The square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, well, there's a trick, there's an extra special thing about square rooting something. When you square root, you actually get 2 answers, because 5 times 5 is 25, but also negative 5 times negative 5 is also 25. So you actually have 2 answers here. You have x equals 5 and x equals negative 5. So that's why I have a star here. Let me get an arrow or something. It tells you how many, I guess I should be more specific. The exponent tells you how many answers you have. So because there is a 2 up there, you're going to have 2 answers. Okay? All right, number 4, same dealio, right? So we have x squared equals 225. Draw a little wall here. Well, anything I do one side, I have to do to the other. So let's look. I have a square, I want to get rid of it. So I would have to square root both sides. Okay, well, if I square root this side, I get x, because that goes away. But then I have to square root this side as well. When I put square root of 225 in the calculator, square root of 225, I get 15. Because 15 times 15 is 225. But what else is the square root of 225? Negative 15. Because negative 15 times negative 15 is 225. So it's just the positive and negative of the same number. So in this one, it was 5 and negative 5. For this one's 15 and negative 15. Excuse me. All right, number 5. I have x plus 5 equals 20. I want to get x by itself. So in order to do that, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Oops, I forgot to draw my wall. My bad. Okay, so this is going to cancel, and I have x equals 15. And that is it. And I can check it because 15 plus 5 is 20. So I can always plug it back in. All right, number 6. I have x minus 17 equals 34. Same deal here. You're going to get x by itself. And so I have negative 17. And the inverse operation of that is addition. So I'm going to add 17 to both sides. You always want to do the opposite. And anything you do one side, you have to do to the other. Cross that out. I have x equals 34 plus 17, which is 51. All right, and our very last example here, negative 5 equals negative 5 plus x. Well, what's hindering my x from being by itself over here? So if you notice, this is kind of flipped. It's backwards a little. Our x has been on the left so far, and now it's on the right. But what's hindering my x to be by itself? I have a negative 5 attached. How do I get rid of a negative 5 on this side? Can I move it to get x by itself? Well, I can add 5 to this side, and that will cancel it, so it becomes 0. And I can also add 5 to the other side. So on this right side, I have just x left, and on this left side, well, negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So I have x equals 0. So this one's a little backwards, but you do the same thing. It just looks a little bit different. All right, so that is just one-step equations and solving them. If you have any questions, please feel free to come in to tutorials.